I built the automated code that kept a $100 million logistics company from collapsing. But when my boss gave my hard earned promotion to his incompetent golf buddy because I lacked executive optics, I didn't get mad. I didn't yell. I didn't even threaten to quit. I just silently deleted my undocumented shortcuts, logged off at exactly 5 p.m., and watched his entire career burn to the ground. My name is Sloane. I am 32 years old, and until a rainy Tuesday in October, I was the absolute invisible backbone of Aegis Fulfillment. Aegis handled the digital supply chain and warehousing logistics for massive, high-end e-commerce retailers across the United States. If our servers went down, or if a routing matrix failed, thousands of packages would be sent to the wrong distribution centers. Millions of dollars of inventory would get lost in the void. It was a high-stakes, high-pressure environment where every second of delay cost money. I was hired 4 years ago as a senior systems analyst. My starting salary was $72,000. It was a decent wage for the job description on paper, but over those 4 years, the job description completely dissolved. I essentially became the unpaid chief technology officer, the operations manager, and the crisis negotiator, all rolled into one exhausted package. I worked 70-hour weeks. I ate cold takeout at my desk at midnight. I missed my best friend's wedding because a critical server crashed and nobody else knew how to reboot the core architecture. The biggest problem at Aegis was that our legacy software was garbage. It was constantly throwing routing errors. During my second year, I got so tired of waking up at 3 in the morning to fix these glitches manually that I spent my entire Thanksgiving weekend writing a custom, highly complex automation script. I called it the Ghost Protocol. The Ghost Protocol ran silently in the background. Whenever the system threw a routing error, my script would catch it, analyze the logic, and autocorrect the destination code before the warehouse floor even knew there was a problem. It was a brilliant piece of engineering. It saved the company roughly 200 hours of manual labor each week. My boss, Richard, the vice president of operations, didn't understand a single line of that code. Richard was a classic corporate empty suit. He wore $2,000 tailored suits, all threw around meaningless buzzwords like synergy, bandwidth, and paradigm shift, and spent most of his afternoons networking at the country club. He didn't know how the software worked, and he didn't care. But Richard was a master at one thing: taking credit for my late nights. Every time I prevented a catastrophic system failure, Richard would stand up at the quarterly executive board meetings and present it as his own strategic victory. He would project my data onto the screen, accept the praise from the CEO, and collect a massive year-end bonus. Later, he would walk by my desk, pat my shoulder, and hand me a $50 Starbucks gift card as a thank you for being a team player. I tolerated the theft of my intellectual property for one reason: the director of infrastructure position was opening up. I had been carrying the department for years. I had a 90-page portfolio documenting every crisis I had solved, every client I had personally retained, and every dollar my Ghost protocol had generated in operational efficiency. It was a guaranteed promotion. It came with a base salary of $150,000 and the actual authority to fix the broken company from the top down. I had earned it. I had bled for it. On a Tuesday afternoon, Richard called me into his glass-walled corner office. I walked in with my portfolio, ready to finally step out of the shadows. I sat in the leather chair across from him, watching him barely glance at the binder I had spent weeks preparing. He pushed it back across his pristine, clutter-free desk with a patronizing, tight-lipped smile. "Sloane, I really appreciate your hustle," Richard said, leaning back and adjusting his expensive silk tie. "You are the ultimate trench worker, but I've reviewed the candidates for the director role, and I've decided to go in a different direction. I'm bringing in Trent from the Chicago office." My stomach dropped. The air in the room suddenly felt very thin. Trent? I knew Trent. Trent was a notoriously lazy project manager who used words like "circle back" to hide the fact that he hadn't done his work. The man literally did not know how to format a PDF without calling IT. But Trent went to the same fraternity as Richard, and they drank expensive scotch together on Friday nights. Richard looked at me with an expression of fake sympathy. "You are a great behind-the-scenes operator, Sloane, but you just lack that executive presence. You don't have the leadership optics we need for the next level. Plus, honestly, you are just too valuable down in the trenches. If I promote you, who is going to keep the gears turning?" He was punishing me for my own competence. He was keeping me trapped in the basement because I was too good at shoveling the coal. I stared at him. I looked at his perfectly manicured hands. I looked at the photos of his expensive ski trips on the wall, trips he took while I was working on weekends to keep his department from imploding. I didn't blink. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my portfolio at his face. The exhaustion I had been carrying for 4 years suddenly crystallized into a terrifying, absolute clarity. I offered him a polite, perfectly practiced corporate smile. I understand, Richard. Thank you for the transparent feedback, I said smoothly. I will make sure the transition for Trent is seamless. I stood up, took my binder, and walked out of his office. I walked straight to my desk and sat down. My hands weren't shaking. I felt completely, dangerously calm. I wasn't going to sabotage the company. Sabotage is illegal, and I am not a criminal. I was just going to engage in some radical malicious compliance. I was going to do exactly what my job description required. Nothing more, nothing less. I was going to act my wage. At 4:55 p.m., I opened the master server dashboard. I navigated to the hidden root folders. I located the ghost protocol, the custom automation scripts I had written on my own personal time, uncompensated and uncontracted. I highlighted the files, and I disabled them. I reverted the servers back to the official, NI company-approved standard operating procedure, a procedure that required manual verification and manual data entry for every single routing error that popped up in the system. At exactly 5 p.m., I shut down my laptop. I grabbed my coat. I didn't check my emails one last time. I didn't review the overnight logs. I just walked out the glass doors and stepped into the cool Seattle rain. They wanted me to be a trench worker. Tomorrow, they were going to find out exactly how deep the trenches really were when I stopped holding back the flood. For 4 years, my morning routine at Aegis Fulfillment started at 6:30 a.m. I would log on from my kitchen island, check the overnight server logs while drinking my coffee, and put out 3 different digital fires before my commute even started. But on Wednesday morning, my laptop stayed closed. I drank my coffee slowly. I watched the local news. I took the scenic route to the office, grabbed a highly overpriced matcha latte, and walked through the glass revolving doors at exactly 9 a.m., not a minute early. The moment I stepped onto the operations floor, the energy hit me like a physical wall. It was an absolute dumpster fire. The massive LED monitoring screens mounted on the walls, which were usually a sea of calming green, were flashing a violent, angry red. The ambient noise of the office, usually just quiet typing and low chatter, was replaced by the frantic ringing of desk phones and people shouting across their cubicles. I walked to my desk at my normal, unhurried pace. I took off my trench coat. I woke up my monitors. Before I could even log in, Trent was standing behind my chair. He was wearing the classic tech bro uniform, a tailored blue button-down and a branded Patagonia fleece vest. But he didn't look like a confident executive today. He was sweating bullets. His face was pale, and his eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal. Sloane, thank God, Trent gasped, leaning over my partition. Where have you been? The whole routing matrix is FUBAR. Zenith Athletics, our second biggest client, just had 10,000 pairs of sneakers routed to a warehouse in North Dakota instead of New York. The system is throwing rejection codes left and right. It's been happening since midnight. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my matcha latte. Oh, wow. That sounds super stressful, Trent. Have you submitted a manual IT ticket? Trent stared at me. His mouth hung open slightly. A manual ticket? What are you talking about? Usually, the system just auto-corrects this stuff. I was told we had a self-healing architecture. Where is the auto-fix? I smiled. It was the exact same polite, tight-lipped corporate smile Richard had given me yesterday. I think you're mistaken, Trent. We don't have official self-healing architecture. There used to be an undocumented script running in the background. But since it wasn't part of the approved standard operating procedure, I disabled it. As a senior analyst, it's above my pay grade to run rogue code on company servers. I wouldn't want to lack executive optics. Trent looked like he was going to pass out. He ran a shaking hand through his expensive haircut. Well, turn it back on, he hissed, his voice cracking. Turn it on right now, Sloane. Zenith is threatening to breach the SLA and pull their entire contract. I'm so sorry, Trent, I replied, my voice dripping with fake sympathy. Modifying core infrastructure is a director-level responsibility. My job description strictly requires me to log the error codes into an Excel spreadsheet and escalate them to management for a solution. Since you are the director of infrastructure, I'll start compiling that spreadsheet for you to review. I turned back to my monitors, opened a blank Excel document, and started slowly, painstakingly copying and pasting a single error code from the dashboard. Control-C, Control-V. It was agonizingly slow. The Ghost protocol used to fix these errors in zero point 0.2 seconds. Doing it manually meant it would take about 15 minutes to resolve a single misrouted package. There were currently 4,000 errors in the queue. Trent was hyperventilating. He stumbled backward, pulling out his phone, completely, utterly useless. I spent the next 3 hours doing exactly what my contract dictated. I took my state-mandated 15-minute coffee break. I chatted with the receptionist about her cat. I filed 20 manual error reports. By 1 p.m., the red flashing lights on the board had doubled. The queue was at 9,000 errors. Millions of dollars of inventory were effectively paralyzed. That was when Richard's office door slammed open. Richard marched across the operations floor. He wasn't walking with his usual arrogant swagger. He looked furious. The regional vice president had just chewed him out, and the panic was bleeding through his custom suit. He bypassed Trent entirely and marched straight to my desk. "Sloane," Richard barked, his voice loud enough to silence the cubicles around us. "Stop this childish game right now. I don't know what you did, but you need to patch the Zenith routing matrix immediately. That is a direct order." I stopped typing. I looked up at him, maintaining perfect, unbothered eye contact. "I would love to be a team player, Richard, but according to Section 4 of the Employee Handbook, Tier 2 analysts are strictly forbidden from executing root-level server migrations without written approval and direct supervision from the department director." I gestured casually toward Trent, who was hiding behind a filing cabinet, looking at his phone. "Since Trent is the director," I said clearly, making sure the entire floor could hear me, "he needs to write the migration protocol and supervise my keystrokes. I'm standing by, ready to follow his executive leadership." Richard turned slowly to look at his fraternity brother. "Trent," Richard said, his voice dangerously low, "write the damn protocol." Trent swallowed hard. The entire operations floor was watching him. He tugged at his fleece vest. "Richard, man, I don't know how the routing matrix is configured," Trent stammered. "I don't know Python. Dude, I've never done a root-level migration. Can't we just synergize the data flow?" You could hear a pin drop in that office. The realization hit Richard like a freight train. He looked at Trent, then he looked at me. The horrifying truth of his own arrogance finally washed over him. He had handed the keys to a $100 million machine to a guy who didn't even know how to put the key in the ignition, and he had alienated the only person who actually knew how to drive. Before Richard could say another word, the glass doors of the operations floor slid open. A sharp, terrifying silence rippled through the room. It was Evelyn Vance, the chief executive officer. Evelyn was a ruthless, brilliant woman who built Aegis from a garage startup. She rarely left her penthouse office on the 50th floor, but she was here now, standing in the middle of our absolute disaster, holding a printed piece of paper. Her eyes scanned the red flashing boards, then locked dead onto Richard. "Richard," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the room like ice, "my phone just rang. Zenith Athletics is pulling their contract, my office. Right now." And then Evelyn's gaze shifted past him, landing directly on me. "You too, Sloane," she commanded. "Bring your laptop." I closed my laptop, tucked it under my arm, and smiled. The real meeting was about to begin. The elevator ride to the 50th floor was agonizingly silent. It was just Richard and me in a brushed steel box, shooting up toward the penthouse executive suites. The only sound was the soft hum of the elevator cables. Richard was staring straight ahead at the brass doors, his jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might shatter. A bead of sweat was rolling down his temple, ruining his perfectly gelled hair. As we passed the 30th floor, Richard finally broke the silence. He didn't look at me. He just spoke in a low, venomous whisper. "I don't know what kind of stunt you think you're pulling, Sloane," he hissed, "but you are going to walk into Evelyn's office, take full responsibility for this catastrophic outage, and then you are going to go downstairs and fix it. If you try to embarrass me in front of the CEO, I will personally make sure you never work in the tech industry again. I will sue you for corporate sabotage. Do you understand me?" He was trying to intimidate me. A week ago, a threat like that from a vice president would have given me a panic attack. But today I just looked at the glowing numbers on the elevator panel. "I understand perfectly, Richard," I replied softly. The doors chimed and slid open. Evelyn Vance's office was intimidating by design. It was a massive, minimalist room surrounded by floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the gray, rain-soaked Seattle skyline. Evelyn was sitting behind a massive slab of black marble that served as her desk. She didn't offer us a seat. Richard walked in first, immediately slipping into his slick corporate survival mode. He plastered a serious and deeply concerned look on his face. Evelyn, I am so sorry about the Zenith athletics situation, Richard started, his voice smooth and authoritative. We are handling it. Unfortunately, we are dealing with a rogue employee. Evelyn didn't blink. She just folded her hands on the marble desk. Explain, she demanded. Richard pointed a perfectly manicured finger right at me. He was throwing me right under the bus without a second of hesitation. Sloane has been a Tier 2 analyst for us for years, Richard said, shaking his head like a disappointed father. Yesterday, I had to pass her over for a director promotion because she simply lacks the leadership bandwidth. Apparently, she took it personally. This morning, out of pure spite, she maliciously deleted core routing files from the server, paralyzing the Zenith accounts. It is blatant corporate sabotage. I've already contacted HR to begin her termination process. It was a brilliant, terrifying lie. He was gaslighting the CEO, spinning a narrative where he was the victim of a bitter, disgruntled employee. If I didn't have the receipts, I would have been escorted out of the building by security and hit with a $1 million lawsuit before lunch. Evelyn slowly turned her sharp, calculating gaze toward me. The silence in the room was heavy enough to crush coal into diamonds. Is this true, Sloane? Evelyn asked. Her voice was ice cold. Did you sabotage my servers because you didn't get a promotion? I stepped forward. I didn't defend myself immediately. I didn't raise my voice. I just opened my laptop, woke up the screen, and turned it around so Evelyn could see it. No, Evelyn, I said. My voice perfectly steady. I did not delete a single core file. I am strictly following the company's approved standard operating procedure. I tapped a key. A PDF of my original employment contract appeared on the screen, right next to the official IT protocols signed and dated by Richard himself. For the past 3 years, our approved system has required all routing errors to be verified manually, I explained. But because our legacy software is highly unstable, it was generating thousands of errors a day. So, working on my own personal time over weekends and holidays, unpaid and unprompted, I wrote a highly complex Python automation script to fix the errors instantly. I called it the Ghost Protocol. Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she read the documents on the screen. Yesterday, Richard informed me that I lack the executive optics for a promotion. I continued, never breaking eye contact with the CEO. That feedback made me realize I was overstepping my boundaries. Running unapproved, uncompensated freeware on company servers is a massive liability. So, to ensure I was fully compliant with Richard's vision of my role, I disabled my personal script. I reverted the servers back to the exact baseline that Richard officially manages. The color drained from Richard's face. He stepped forward, his voice cracking. Evelyn, this is BS! She's playing semantics to cover up her sabotage! Evelyn held up one hand. Richard instantly shut his mouth. Evelyn typed something into her own computer. She was pulling up HR records. She was looking at the bonus structures. Richard, Evelyn said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly quiet register. I am looking at your Q4 performance review from last December. You received a $50,000 cash bonus for, and I quote, designing and implementing a self-healing automated routing architecture. Richard swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Evelyn, as the VP, I oversaw the department's synergistic approach to the... Stop using buzzwords in my office, Evelyn snapped. The sound echoed off the glass walls like a whip. Did you write the code, Richard? My team and I collaborated on the... I'll make this very simple, Evelyn interrupted, standing up from her desk. She walked around the marble slab and stood inches away from Richard. If you built the automated architecture that you took a $50,000 bonus for, you should be able to turn it back on. What programming language is the routing matrix written in, Richard? Tell me right now. Richard was literally shaking. The golden boy of the C-suite was completely exposed. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for help, begging me to throw him a lifeline. I just gave him that same polite, tight-lipped corporate smile he had given me 24 hours ago. It's Python, Richard, I whispered. Evelyn let out a sharp, humorless exhale. She walked back to her desk and pressed a button on her intercom. Security, Evelyn said into the speaker, please send 2 guards to the 50th floor. Richard is leaving the building. Richard stumbled backward. Evelyn, wait, you can't do this. I have equity. Trent is down there. He can fix it. Trent is an idiot who couldn't synergize his way out of a paper bag. Evelyn fired back, finally losing her temper. You lied to the board. You stole credit from your subordinates, and you put a $10 million contract at risk to protect your own fragile ego. You are fired, Richard, effective immediately. Get out of my sight. The heavy mahogany doors opened, and two massive security guards stepped into the office. They didn't even give Richard time to argue. They flanked him, grabbed his arms, and escorted the vice president of operations out of the penthouse, looking like a total criminal. The doors clicked shut. The storm outside was raging, rain violently lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. But inside the office, it was completely still. It was just Evelyn and me. She took a deep breath, smoothing the wrinkles out of her blazer. She sat back down in her leather executive chair and looked at me. The anger in her eyes was gone, replaced by a sharp, predatory calculation. You let my servers crash to prove a point, Sloane, Evelyn said softly. I didn't crash them, Evelyn, I replied, closing my laptop. I just let you see how your company actually runs without my unpaid labor holding up the roof. Evelyn stared at me for a long, heavy moment. Then the corner of her mouth twitched. It was almost a smile. Zenith Athletics is calling me in exactly 20 minutes to officially terminate their contract, Evelyn said, tapping her expensive pen on the marble desk. What is it going to take for you to turn the ghost protocol back on before my phone rings? The antique grandfather clock in the corner of Evelyn's office ticked heavily. It was 18 minutes until Zenith Athletics called to officially terminate a $10 million contract. Evelyn leaned forward, resting her elbows on the black marble desk. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked like a shark calculating the cost of a meal. What is it going to take, Sloane? Evelyn repeated, her voice perfectly level. You have the leverage. So let's skip the corporate dance. Name your price to turn the ghost protocol back on. I didn't hesitate. I had been writing this list in my head for 4 years. First, I said, keeping my posture completely relaxed. Trent is fired. No severance package, no golden parachute. He is an active liability to your infrastructure. You need to clean house immediately. Done, Evelyn said without blinking. He's gone. What else? Second, the director of infrastructure position is mine, I continued, but I am not reporting to a new vice president of operations. I will report directly to you. I want full, unmitigated autonomy over the engineering team and the architecture budget. Nobody overrides my technical protocols. Evelyn narrowed her eyes slightly. Reporting directly to the CEO is a C-suite privilege, Sloane. That's a massive jump. It's non-negotiable, I replied. You just saw what happens when a middle manager with a business degree tries to run a server farm. It ends in a dumpster fire. You need a technical expert calling the shots. Evelyn tapped her pen once. Fine. You answer to me. What's the number? $200,000 base salary, I said. Fully retroactive to the beginning of this fiscal quarter. Plus a 10% performance bonus tied directly to the uptime of the servers and stock options. The room went completely silent. The rain continued to batter the glass windows behind her. Evelyn sat back in her chair. She studied me like she was seeing me for the very first time. You're playing hardball, Sloane, Evelyn said softly. You're holding a gun to the head of my company over a piece of unauthorized software. I could have security escort you out right now and let my lawyers deal with you. I didn't flinch. I just looked at the clock. 15 minutes. You could, Evelyn, but if I walk out that door, you don't just lose Zenith Athletics. The backlog is currently at 12,000 errors. By tomorrow morning, the entire routing matrix will collapse. It will take a team of outside engineers at least 6 months to reverse engineer the Ghost protocol and fix the legacy code. You will bleed tens of millions of dollars before Thanksgiving. I leaned forward, placing my hands on her marble desk. $200,000 isn't a ransom, Evelyn. It's a massive discount I am offering to save your company. Evelyn stared at me. Her expression was completely unreadable. The silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. The clock ticked down to 14 minutes. 13 minutes. And then a slow, genuine smile spread across the CEO's face. She didn't look defeated. She looked impressed. Richard was a fool, Evelyn said quietly. He kept a shark locked in the basement because he was afraid it would bite him. She opened the top drawer of her desk, pulled out a thick company letterhead, and grabbed her heavy fountain pen. She scribbled a few lines, signed her name at the bottom, and slid the paper across the desk to me. It was a handwritten executive mandate. My new title, my new salary, my autonomy. You have a deal, Director, Evelyn said. Now fix my servers. I took the paper, folded it neatly, and slid it into my blazer pocket. I opened my laptop right there on the black marble desk. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I bypassed the standard firewalls, logged into the root directory, and highlighted the ghost protocol files. Enable, execute. I hit the enter key. On Evelyn's secondary monitor, a live feed of the operations floor dashboard was playing. We both watched in silence as the wall of flashing, angry red lights instantly froze. Line by line, the error queue began to drop. 12,000, 10,000, 5,000. The ghost protocol was tearing through the backlog at lightning speed, auto-correcting the destination codes, rerouting the inventory, and healing the fractured system. Within 60 seconds, the entire board turned a beautiful, calm, brilliant green. I closed my laptop. "It's done," I said. "The backlog is cleared." Right at that exact second, the phone on Evelyn's desk began to ring. The caller ID flashed Zenith Athletics, VP of Logistics. Evelyn looked at the phone, then looked at me. She picked up the receiver, hitting the speakerphone button. "Evelyn Vance speaking," she answered smoothly. "Evelyn," the voice on the other end barked. "We have a massive problem. Our analytics team is showing a total blackout on your routing servers for the last—" Wait, the voice suddenly paused. Typing echoed over the speakerphone. "Never mind," the Zenith executive said, sounding incredibly confused. "The board just refreshed. Every single package is perfectly routed. We show 0 errors. I guess it was a glitch on our end." Evelyn looked right at me and smiled. "It must have been, Marcus," Evelyn replied smoothly. "Our system is running flawlessly. In fact, we just promoted our top engineer to director of infrastructure to ensure things stay that way." "Excellent," the voice said, the anger completely gone. "Tell them to keep up the good work. We'll talk next week." The line clicked dead. Evelyn hung up the phone. She stood up from her desk and extended her hand across the marble. "Welcome to the executive team, Sloane," she said. I stood up and shook her hand. It was a firm, equal grip. "Thank you, Evelyn. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go down to the operations floor. I have an infrastructure department to rebuild." I walked out of the penthouse, took the elevator down to the lobby, and grabbed an espresso from the ground floor cafe. Through the massive glass windows of the building's entrance, I watched Richard's corporate execution finish playing out. He was standing on the wet Seattle sidewalk in the pouring rain. He didn't have his tailored cashmere overcoat. He was holding a damp cardboard box filled with his expensive desk toys and his framed country club photos. He tried to hail a cab, but they kept driving right past him. The golden boy of the C-suite, standing in the gutter, completely locked out of the castle he pretended to build, Trent didn't fare any better. When I got back to the operations floor, his desk was already empty. Human resources had escorted him out through the back freight elevator to avoid making a scene. He left his Patagonia fleece vest hanging over his chair in his rush to escape. They thought they were the architects of the company. But the moment the real architect stopped working for free, their entire illusion shattered in less than 8 hours. 6 months have passed since that rainy Tuesday, and the transformation of Aegis Fulfillment has been nothing short of spectacular. I didn't just take the director title. I completely gutted the toxic culture Richard had built. I fired the deadweight. I promoted the silent, exhausted trench workers who were actually keeping the lights on. I gave them raises, mandated strict 40-hour work weeks, and made sure absolutely no one was answering emails at midnight. When you remove incompetent middle management and stop paying people with Starbucks gift cards, productivity actually skyrockets. My Ghost protocol is now the official patented architecture of the entire company. We haven't had a major routing failure in over 180 days. And Richard? Richard tried to sue Evelyn for wrongful termination and demand his unvested stock options. But Evelyn's corporate lawyers absolutely buried him. They proved that he had committed financial fraud by taking a $50,000 bonus for a software architecture he didn't write and couldn't operate. To avoid facing criminal charges, Richard had to sign an airtight non-disclosure agreement and walk away with absolutely nothing. No severance, no equity, no golden parachute. The tech industry in Seattle is a very small, very gossipy world. Word gets round when a vice president gets escorted out of a building by security. Last I heard, Richard is working as a mid-level shift manager at a regional paper supply company. He doesn't have a corner office anymore. He doesn't have an assistant. He actually has to sit at a desk and format his own spreadsheets. I imagine he still uses words like synergy and paradigm shift while he stares at his Excel errors, wondering why the system isn't magically fixing itself anymore. I want you to listen to me very carefully. If you are the invisible pillar at your job, if you are the one working late, skipping lunches, and constantly fixing the mistakes of managers who make 3 times your salary, you need to wake up. Hard work is a virtue, But hard work without boundaries is just corporate exploitation. The corporate machine will gladly let you carry the weight of an entire department on your shoulders. They will let you bleed for them, and then they will look you dead in the eye and pass you over for a promotion because you don't fit the optics. Stop giving away your brilliance for free. Stop building their empires in the dark. Act your wage. Do exactly what your contract dictates and nothing more. Let the broken systems fail. Let the incompetent managers sweat. Because sometimes the only way to prove to a company that you are the foundation is to stop holding up the roof. If you've ever been the invisible hero at your job, or if my story made you smile today, drop a comment below and type "Act Your Wage." Let me know I'm not alone. Hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Keep building your own empire, and never let anyone take credit for your fire. I'll see you in the next story.